77 WABC Radio New York. Welcome to the Yolanda Show. I'm your host, Yola Nash, and I'm super excited to introduce my great guest. She's the owner and executive director of the Adoption Consultancy, and she has helped hundreds of families complete the adoption process. And she's joining me now on the Yolanda Show. Please welcome the amazing Nicole Witt. Bravo!
Hi, Yola. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm so thrilled to have you on the show, I have to say, because what you do and your beautiful energy is unbelievable, and I know that our conversation will help so many listeners. So I was thinking that with the new year, many of us will be setting up new goals, new dreams, and for many it will mean the dream of becoming a parent. But for some, it's just not so easy. And I thought it would be great to invite you and talk about the adoption process. But before we jump into this vast area of information, I would love to first ask you, please give us a little bit of background about your work. How did you get involved with adoption?
Sure. Yeah, my husband and I went through the whole infertility process. Mm-hmm. And, as we were making some of our decisions for our path forward, we didn't really give adoption sort of the attention or the thought that we probably should have, because we believed so many of the myths about adoption that are out there, right? We believe that it can take years to adopt, that the biological parents can come back and regain custody of their child,
yes.
That there are no healthy children available for adoption. We believed all of those things. So in the process of our infertility journey, we got very involved with our local adoption support group, started doing volunteer with it and so on. And through the course of those experiences, found out, wow, all these things that we believed about adoption really aren't true, and this really is an incredible option and path for people. And that's kind of what led me down this path to start helping people understand what a wonderful option it can be.
Wow, beautiful. What is the infertility rate in the United States right now?
It's about 1 in 8 couples of childbearing age are experiencing infertility. It's much higher than people think that it is.
Wow, it is high. Do you think the way we live, what we eat, the level of the pollution we experience, these are main reasons, or there is something else?
From my perspective, what I've seen with my clients over the years
mm-hmm.
is that I see more and more people waiting longer to try to have families, whether it's because of, pursuing more education or wanting to get more established in their careers or just getting married later. And I think with, hearing about a lot of celebrities and so on, having babies much later in life, I think a lot of people don't realize how much more difficult it can be the mm-hmm. older you can get. A lot of people are very surprised, come their late 30s, early 40s, that they're having so much trouble achieving a pregnancy. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Is the domestic adoption easier and faster than international adoption?
It kind of varies depending on what's going on with the different countries. So
mm-hmm.
right now, I would say that it is, because a lot of the programs that were historically available are no longer available, such as Vietnam, Guatemala, Russia, etc. So, there are some pilot programs happening in Central America, so maybe down the road,
mm-hmm.
international will be a little bit easier again. But right now, there aren't a lot of great, robust international programs. So most people, when they kind of learn about the myths versus the realities and the pros and the cons, they end up pursuing domestic.
Right. How long does it take to finalize the adoption process in the U.S. right now?
Well, so there are a couple different steps to it. I
mm-hmm.
kind of start looking at the time frame from once our clients are out there ready to be presented to potential birth moms, meaning that they've done a home study, they've signed up with, at least one agency or, done some other kind of outreach, and they have a profile book out there, which is what the potential birth parents look at to select the adoptive parents, because mm-hmm. everybody takes a different amount of time to do those things. But once people are out there, almost all of our clients adopt within a year. Our average time frame is about 6 months, but it really depends on, how you're going about it. There are some places out there that are more like 2 or 3 years plus, but sometimes those are a lot lower cost. So that's often the trade-off people need to make. So it really just sort of depends on what some of your circumstances and priorities are.
Nicole, please tell us also, is it possible for singles and, for instance, older people or same-sex orientation couples to adopt, or it's not? How does it work?
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. I've worked with lots of clients in all of those categories who've adopted successfully. Generally speaking, it can be a little bit more difficult. On average, it can take a little bit longer. But it really just depends on sort of how open and flexible they are about, the circumstances and background and so on of the child that they're willing to adopt. If they're extremely limited with that, where the potential birth mom is always going to have that option of a very traditional couple instead, she often, but not always, leans that way. But if they're open to some more of those cases where maybe not as many of the traditional couples are open to, then they can have a lot more success much more quickly.
I see. I assume that many listeners who are listening to our conversation right now would wonder, what is the average cost of an adoption of a newborn?
Yeah, it varies so much depending on how you go about it. There are ways that people can do outreach on their own to try to find a potential birth mom, and that can cost, making the connection can cost virtually zero, and then you would have to pay for some legal fees to actually go through the process, which could be, $5,000 to $10,000 possibly. A typical agency adoption can be a lot more expensive than that. A lot of the places that I work with, it can run from high 30,000s to high 40,000. But there's a couple things. There is currently a $14,000 tax credit, which is a dollar for dollar credit. It's not a deduction. It's much more valuable than a deduction. So for people who qualify, it can ultimately put more than $14,000 back in their pocket. The other thing is that there are agencies that are less expensive. There are agencies even that have sliding scales based on income. But again, sometimes you may have that trade-off between cost and wait time because, of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but the larger, busier places who tend to place babies more quickly are in that position because they're investing a lot in outreach, so they have higher overhead costs, than the smaller, more boutique places. So again, you can kind of find the path that fits your needs and your priorities.
And Nicole, as the owner and director of the Adoption Consultancy and your incredible work, please help us understand, what's the main mission of your consultancy?
So I tell people that a quick and easy way to get it is that I'm kind of like a wedding planner for adoption. I guide people step by step through the process to try to take as much of the stress out of them for it and to help them adopt safely and quickly. I guide them step by step through the process. I serve as sort of an unbiased resource and advocate solely for the adoptive parents. And I have a nationwide network of agencies and attorneys that I work with that I connect my clients with. And those agencies and the attorneys, they're the ones who work with the potential birth parents and make the matches and do that aspect of the process. I focus my work solely on the pre-adoptive parents.
And I'm wondering, what are the most common questions or concerns that couples have while entering the adoption process?
Cost and wait time, of course, are big ones. Some of the other questions are in terms of, a lot of people have heard these myths and rumors, and different states have different laws, but in terms of birth parents being able to come back down the road and reclaim custody of the child. So people are, of course, very fearful of that. Usually once they're kind of educated on the laws, that fear goes away. People always want to talk about openness in adoption, and what does that look like these days? And again, a fear there is often that it really looks like co-parenting, and once they understand that that's not really what it is, usually people are more comfortable with openness. So those are some of the big topics that people usually want to talk about up front.
I know that probably many prospective parents are also asking about the health of their future child or the mother, right? The environment and all that stuff.
Yes, people are very concerned about, any substance use and those kinds of things, and trying to get a handle on, what type of information will they have, what medical records will they have access to, what won't they. Of course, so much of that is just so case dependent. It's hard to answer those questions in generalities up front.
Yes.
But, statistically speaking, babies that are placed for adoption in the U.S. are equally healthy to all other babies that are born in this country. They're no more likely to be, drug exposed or, sickly in any way.
Please explain a little bit how this whole process works. Does the newborn's mother choose the prospective parents, or the parents choose the baby they want? How does it work? Or it works at the same time they communicate together?
So usually how it works is that, especially if the adoptive parents are going through kind of a typical agency process, they'll fill out a questionnaire kind of laying out their parameters with the type of cases that they're open to, from, cost to race to social and medical background of the birth parents, to, sort of what all of their parameters are. And then the potential birth parents, when they sign up with an agency, they do the same. They kind of fill out a form with what they're looking for in a family. Do they only want to consider married couples? Are they open to singles? Are they open to same-sex couples? What age range? What religion? Do they want somebody who lives in a certain state? All those kinds of things. And then the agency will basically sort of look at, who matches up. And typically, at that point, they'll contact the pre-adoptive parents and say, here's the opportunity that we have. Are you interested in being presented? And then if they are interested, then they'll present they're called profiles. They're almost like little scrapbooks that show what the family has to offer. So depending on the agency's policies, they may show the potential birth mom 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, profiles, and then she will select the family based on those.
I see. And I've heard that most employers don't offer paid adoption leave. Why is that? And can this situation be changed?
Yeah, and a lot of employers don't even technically offer a paid maternity leave or paternity leave either.
Wow.
A lot of them just technically offer what's short-term disability for women who have given birth, right, which is often 6 to 8 weeks or so, but their policies don't extend to people who haven't given birth, meaning the dads or people who built their family through adoption or surrogacy or other ways. And it's really, I think, extra tough on adoptive parents because a lot of times adoption can be last minute. So, they haven't had any time to make preparations, and then they don't have any time after bringing the child home to kind of get things in place before they're expected to go back to work.
And it takes time to kind of get together the whole family and create this special welcoming situation and bond with the new baby, and so many layers goes into that situation, right?
Yes, absolutely. And if you think about with a pregnancy, the baby's been, hearing the parents' voices and their laughter and the sounds of the household and so on. And with an adoption, that hasn't been the case at all. So both the baby and the parents need that time for adjustment and bonding.
Absolutely. Nicole, please give us your social media handles and your website and your contacts, because I'm sure people would love to connect with you, and I'm sure they would have more questions, and so that would be the great way to connect with them.
Yes, thank you. My website is theadoptionconsultancy.com, and that's where you can also find me on Facebook under The Adoption Consultancy, and my Twitter handle is Adopt Consultant.
Perfect. Nicole, thank you so much for today, and all the best for your work, because you're doing an incredible work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been so great to talk to you.
Nicole Witt, everybody.